Greetings everyone, TLOU Strategist here with another interesting video on The Last of Us Part 2. So first off, thank you so much for joining me today. I sincerely respect your time and I believe that you'll find that this video is completely worthwhile. So when the 2017 PlayStation Experience The Last of Us panel hit, a lot of people seemed quite underwhelmed at the amount of new information that was shared. I beg to differ, and I posted a cheeky little tweet which read, "There was a lot revealed at PSX 2017 for those who can read between the lines. Sometimes it's what's not said that speaks volumes." So there are two things that I want to mention first before we dive deeply into this. The first is, if you haven't watched the panel yet, you may want to check it out. It's about an hour long or so, and if you don't have that time, then I would highly suggest you watch Nick30's recap of the event. He did a fantastic job condensing it down to everything you need to know. The second thing that I want to say is that Neil Druckmann and Hallie Gross have remained very cryptic and tight-lipped about The Last of Us Part 2 storyline. And for good reason. When creating a compelling and rewarding storyline, it is critically important that the reader, or in the case of video games, the player, go through and experience the journey for themselves. It is this personal experience that creates the amazing emotional responses at pivotal moments. If we are simply told of these moments and not experience them for ourselves, then we really are robbed of the emotional epiphany that has the potential to occur. I understand that we're all super excited to know more about this game, but we must respect the journey. All will be revealed in due time. Okay, with that said, let's delve deeply into some of the more hidden and esoteric aspects I discovered while watching the 2017 PSX panel.
Yeah, I gotta give Hallie her credit too. So I have just some casual, light questions right off the bat. One, will Ellie meet her mother?
That would be tricky.
Oh.
Part 1. Will Ellie meet her mother? So Druckmann goes on to say that this can be taken literally or metaphorically, and I'm going to focus on some of the more symbolic illustrations of this. So the first thing that came to my mind was the phrase, meet your maker. And indeed, in a way, Anna was Ellie's maker. And should Anna be deceased, as previously believed, then Ellie would most likely be meeting her mother, her maker, through death. The other interesting thing that came to mind was the unusual phenomenon that sometimes occurs when people are in the process of dying, usually from acts of extreme violence or trauma. They call out for their mother.
Yeah, the thing with songs is you could take them literally or they're a metaphor for something else. And just like everything else we're putting out there, we're not going to say a whole lot about that song.
Okay, but is it literal or a metaphor?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, cool. Just two real quick questions. Is Joel dead? And when is the game coming out? So.
What was the first question?
Joel, alive or dead?
It depends at which point. Everybody dies at some point.
Part 2. Is Joel dead? So originally I was going to give my thoughts of the first trailer in its own video. But Druckmann's comment here really has inspired me to give my thoughts on it at this time. Please keep in mind that this is just one theory or take that I have on this, and it should not be taken as the one and true explanation. So here we go. So here we see Ellie's hand shaking. It immediately reminded me of when others start to turn. The shaking, like Sam did at the end of the summer chapter. It made me think, perhaps Ellie is turning, but not like a normal person. Perhaps she is turning at an exceptionally slow rate. Like it may take 10 years or more. I noticed the meticulous attention given to aging Ellie up to 19 years of age, whereas Joel looks the same age as in The Last of Us Part 1. And somehow his hair seems even darker. This led me to this thought. Joel has been dead for a while, maybe even years, and is now simply a figment of Ellie's ever-deteriorating mind. So he's in the game, yeah, and he's with her, yep, but he's not really there. He's more just there like in a psychological thriller.
Wow. Hey, guys. Quick reminder of mortality, just in case you hadn't thought about the void.
The thing with, like, it's so interesting. Like, we always want to go into our games, and people know that there's stakes. There's real stakes. And with The Last of Us, no one is safe. And we wanted people to go into The Last of Us Part 2, especially with this theme, and what we're trying to say with this game is knowing that no one is safe, not even these two. And it's funny, like working on Uncharted 4, we really wanted to raise the stakes as well, but that game is much more lighthearted. So
Wait, what?
We had to call it a thief's end and do all these crazy trails to get people to think, like, is it possible for Nathan Drake to die in this game? And with this, we released one trailer. Joel walks through a door and is like, oh my God, is Joel a ghost? Is he dead?
So one little interesting thing that I noticed here, as one camera shifted from one angle to another, that there was actually apparently some footage cut out, because if you see where like the kind of ghost image of Neil from when it was on the original angle, and it's now shifting to the full frame shot of the group, his hand is up by his mouth, but when he was talking, it was not. So clearly something was cut out. But anyways, I digress. We're now going to shift into an interesting question that was asked of Hallie.
Well, that's enough out of Neil.
Fail states. I'm really proud of myself. So fail states are when you're in gameplay. And like I remember I was pitching, I have to be so careful right now.
Pitching something that was going to happen.
I was pitching just like a character having to go from one location to another in a space that the player will never have experienced before. And I'm like, okay, so this character goes there. And Neil goes, well, how do they know where they're going?
Part 3, from one location to another. So I believe that this part was particularly difficult for Hallie to discuss and to not slip up, because the scene she is describing may not just be jumping from one location to another, but possibly also from one time to another. Perhaps the core of this problem she describes is this: how do we seamlessly incorporate flashbacks into the present storyline? Doing this would really open up the storyline to a whole myriad of possibilities and areas of exploration.
It's like, well, what's the fail state? And I was like, in TV, we don't have to deal with these things. I don't know. I don't know.
I still barely know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's just like you have to anticipate what happens if they don't accomplish the goal.
If the player doesn't do what you want, then that's usually a problem with, like, when we have a bunch of like great story ideas and you're like, yeah, but what if the player doesn't do that? Then you have to always have ways to deal with that.
Wait. So
Part 4, the Moths. It was at this point in the interview that I thought, Neil, you cunning son of a gun. I was immediately reminded of Ellie's tattoo, the contrasting ferns with the moth, and the Outdate Bray poster with Ellie's knife with the moths around it. The ferns can represent peace, life, growth, and obviously they are highly prevalent in the moist environment of the Pacific Northwest, which they later confirmed as the primary location of this game. The moth symbolism is much more deep and complex in my mind. Moths, particularly Luna moths, are associated with death. Moths also represent spiritual transformation and rebirth due to their dramatic change from crawling larvae to flying moths. Another thing, moths are drawn towards light, for better, for worse. Lastly, people who have had near-death experiences or have coded and been brought back to life report seeing and going towards a bright light. Make of that what you will. Part 5, the big picture. The Last of Us. What is the us? The first game really pushed the envelope in terms of diverse and untraditional supporting characters. Uncharted 4 Lost Legacy did the same, with 2 female lead characters, an absolute rarity in gaming. Naughty Dog is not afraid to make a strong political statement with its characters and games. In this way, perhaps, the us is Joel. Joel represents the old mainstream constructs, the heterosexual Caucasian male dominated way of life. Joel had several close calls with death in part 1, with him being rescued by Ellie in the 2 most serious situations where it seemed his death was imminent. Ellie, the mystery woman, Yara, and Lev represent a complex and interesting blend of feminine, androgynous, and transgender archetypes. When moving from an old way of living to the new, like a larva metamorphosing into an adult moth, the death of the old is not only imminent, but necessary. It is extremely important to remember as well that the opposite of death is not life, it's birth.
After the first day, Hallie goes home and talks to her husband, and she's like, I think I got someone pregnant.
The cattle skull, the growing grass pushing new life through the eye sockets, and the moth sitting on top of it. It was all right there on Neil's shirt for those who could see it. So thank you all so very much for taking your time to watch this video today. Please, if you have any questions or comments or ideas, leave them below in the comments, and I will do my best to get back to you and respond accordingly. Also, I'd like to make note that I am a very small, unmonetized channel. I make no money off of this. If for some reason you're a bigger channel or you found my ideas fascinating or interesting, please give due credit. Credit this video or myself by name, but don't just take these ideas and pass them off as your own. It's the right thing to do. And I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your week. Take care.